I moved to Cape Cod after I finished graduate school for a job. Affordable year-round housing on the Outer Cape is really challenging. So in the period 10 years that I lived on Cape Cod, I lived in Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, and Provincetown. Provincetown is the town at the very tip of Cape Cod, here, as you look at the Cape. Provincetown has 2,000 year-round residents, and in the summer it has about 60,000. So it's a small town and a big town at the same time. And Provincetown is a lot of things, but in the summer, if I had to condense it, it's basically a gay boy party town. Commercial Street is like a vaudeville burlesque show that's performed on a slip and slide of human flesh, essentially. And you can be like walking up the street and someone will slap your ass and you look around to see who it was, and it's this drag version of Cher or Barbra Streisand or Elton John. And gay boys walk around in Speedos and high heels. And I used to like to say that in Provincetown, like in the summer, you are never the most anything. You're never the most fabulous, you're never the most fit, you're never the most intoxicated, you're never the most upset, you're never the most crazy. You can have a really lot of fun trying to be, but you can't win in the summer. You're anonymous, right? And then in September, the town starts to thin down, and Septembers are hallucinogenically beautiful on the Outer Cape. And then in October, the town sort of closes up, and it's kind of like a boa constrictor wearing a tight turtleneck. It gets a lot smaller, and with the absence of the drama of summer, the people that live there year-round kind of look to each other for amusement, and it can get really, really gossipy. I mean, you just start to hear things like, like I heard that the real reason that Anne left Curtis was that she found out he voted Republican in 1984. And I heard that Shelby is sleeping with both Dana the boy and Dana the girl, and both Danas know about it, but neither Dana knows that the other Dana knows about it, and Shelby doesn't know anything about it at all. And, by the time January hits, everyone in town knows more about your own life than you do. It's just the nature of a small town. I lived there for 2 periods of my time on the Cape, and the first time I lived there, I was going through my divorce, which was, I don't know if any divorce is easy, but mine was really sort of apocalyptic, and my now ex-husband and I were at that horrible point where you know that you're breaking up, but you still live in the same house together. And so during that time that I lived in Provincetown for the first time, I was either screaming my head off, sobbing uncontrollably, or completely hammered, or any combination thereof, and more often than not, all 3 at once. It was not a good look. After my husband moved out, I moved to a place I could afford in Wellfleet, and then I moved back to Provincetown a few years later when I got a job with a subsidized apartment. Score. The fact that I hadn't forgiven myself for my behavior during that first period in Provincetown really served me well, I think, when I moved back, because I was really determined to negate that. Like, I had been this horrible, messy, dark thing when I'd lived there before, and when I moved back, I wanted to be positive. Like, I wanted to shine light, and I wanted to just love that town up. I wanted to give back. I wanted to make up for the damage I had caused. And for a while I did. I had this sweet little job and this sweet little apartment, and I went running every morning, and I smiled and waved at people, and I baked a lot of cookies. And the thing that you hit that point in your life where it's really magical, where you're like so kind and happy, and the kinder and happier you feel, the more generous you want to be, and it just sort of builds on itself. And that was like a really, really beautiful point of my life. And that lasted a few months. And then my mom died. My mom died really abruptly. Patty was a really efficient and effective person, and so it was like, even in the act of dying, it was almost like she didn't fuck around, you know, like on Tuesday, she left work early, she was feeling low energy. On Wednesday, she was diagnosed with leukemia. On Thursday, she was given 3 months to 3 years, and on Saturday, she was dead. I can't claim anything original about my sadness during that time. I mean, I think sometimes people die, and sometimes they're your mom. Losing our parents, it's universal, right? The universality of it doesn't mean that it doesn't suck. There are some people, like maybe even some of you, who would take times of duress in your life and work to mitigate them by doing something really healthy, like maybe you juice some kale, or you do some yoga, or you talk to a damn therapist, or you like whatever. If you're one of those people, I respect you. And I congratulate you. I'm not one of you. Managing my own physical and emotional health in times of sadness has always been a challenge for me. It's my innate nature to take my low times and to just drive them even lower. So when Mom died, in addition to being afraid of absolutely everything in the entire world, because Momless life is really scary, I was also afraid that I would like slide into this pit of depression and be so deep that I would never be able to climb out. So I did the only thing that I could think to do at that time, which is I went to the shelter and I adopted a puppy, which was weird because I actually don't like dogs. Dogs are sort of gross, right? I like fish, you know, fish are graceful and quiet. But just show of hands, like how many of you have never gone out and gotten a dog? Okay, a couple of you. Everyone else knows this, but for those of you who don't, I want to tell you this crazy thing that happens when you go out and get a dog. The very day that you go out and you get your dog, you come home, and then you've got this dog. And your dog, it lives with you, right? Your dog is actually in your apartment. And then you have to do all this weird shit, like you have to feed your dog. And you have to walk your dog, which means that you have to walk, which means that you have to leave your apartment, which means that you cannot actually do the only thing that you really want to do, which is lie curled up in a fetal position on your bathroom floor, drinking gin from a plastic bottle for the next 50 years. So what I did during that time was I walked my dog. Like I walked my dog everywhere. I walked my dog on the street, I walked my dog on the beach, I walked my dog through the woods, I took my dog to work, I took him to the doctor's office, I took him to the grocery store, I took him out to boat. I walked my dog with this white-knuckled death grip of total desperation. I walked my dogs, I didn't know what else to do. And one day, I took my dog walking to the national seashore where these cranberry bogs exist. So there are these natural bogs that exist on the seashore, and I was just kind of hanging out there picking my cranberries, and my dog Ralph was just doing whatever the hell dogs do. I don't even know. And that night, I got home and I walked my dog up Commercial Street. And my dog Ralph stopped to take a shit right in front of the bay windows of the Squealing Pig, which is one of the few bars in Provincetown that stays open in the winter. And there was a street light and the bay window and Ralph. And I bent down to pick it up, and as I bent down, I noticed that it looked a little bit red, and I thought there was blood in it. And my first thought was like, oh my God, now my dog's gonna die too, right? But as I picked it up, I realized that it wasn't blood. It was cranberries. My dog's shit was completely impacted with these cranberries, and they had been digested just enough to be like translucent and glowing, and in the light of the street lamp, it looked like this weird piece of stained glass, and I'm standing sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so beautiful, right? I've got this, my hands in a bag, I've got this dog shit in my hand, and I'm like in this reverie, just appreciating how beautiful my dog shit is. And then I looked over to the window of the Squealing Pig, which is where you go to sit and drink beer and talk about everyone else in town. And I looked at the window, and there were all these faces that I recognized. Couldn't tell you their names, but I could tell you probably a whole lot about their lives. And I'm like, oh no, like this is the last thing I need is to be run over by the gossip mill this early in the off season. Like I could just see it, you know. I saw Cyndi staring lovingly at this piece of dog shit. Cindy's lost it, or Cindy's on acid, or I don't even know. So, you know, I just kind of bagged it, and I kind of slunk off quickly up the road in shame. And then, you know, as I was walking, I started to think about this conversation I had with my brother, which was that gossip is actually the foundation of folklore. And as I thought about that, I sort of like straightened my shoulders and walked a little taller, because I know that it wasn't blood that made my dog shit red. I mean, I know, and now you know, that it was cranberries. Unless, of course, now I know, and you know, and all of Provincetown knows that I have a magical dog that shits rubies.